Ever given your all to someone who swore they'd never leave, then watched them disappear once you had nothing left to give? Tap that like button. Subscribe if you believe that what goes around comes around with mathematical precision, because what I'm about to tell you proves that sometimes the person who drains you dry ends up drowning without the lifeline only you can throw. My name is Raven. I'm 33 years old. And the day my ex-boyfriend who'd stolen my savings and shattered my heart called begging me to save the business he built with my money was the day I finally understood that revenge isn't about anger. It's about watching karma work while you decide whether mercy is deserved. But before I tell you about that phone call that changed everything, let me take you back to where love made me blind and trust cost me everything, because every comeback story starts with a fall that nearly destroys you. I met Cade Whitmore when I was 27 years old at a food truck festival in Portland. I was working as a senior accountant at a regional firm, living in a modest apartment and saving aggressively toward buying my first home. Cade was running a gourmet grilled cheese truck called Melted Dreams, serving creative combinations that had lines wrapped around the block. I ordered the brie and fig with caramelized onions and ended up talking to him for 20 minutes about food costs and profit margins. He was passionate about food in a way that was infectious, talking about flavor profiles and ingredient sourcing like other people discussed art or music. He was also charming, funny, and had this way of making you feel like the most interesting person he'd ever met. We exchanged numbers that afternoon. Within 2 weeks we were dating. Cade's food truck was doing well, but he had bigger dreams. He wanted to open a brick-and-mortar restaurant, a fast casual concept that would bring gourmet grilled cheese to the masses with multiple locations. He'd talk for hours about his vision, sketching restaurant layouts on napkins and describing menu items with such detail I could almost taste them. I loved his ambition, his creativity, his refusal to settle for just a successful food truck when he could build something bigger. 6 months into our relationship, Cade moved into my apartment. It made financial sense, he said. He was paying expensive rent for a place he barely used since he was always at my apartment anyway. The money he saved could go toward his restaurant fund. I agreed, happy to support his dreams and excited about building a future together. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. Cade worked brutal hours running the food truck while I maintained my accounting job. I'd come home to find him experimenting with new recipes, turning my small kitchen into a test laboratory for menu items. He'd feed me samples and listen carefully to my feedback, treating my opinions as valuable even though I had no professional food experience. We were partners, or so I thought, building toward shared goals and a future that included marriage, maybe kids, definitely success. Then Cade found the perfect location for his first restaurant. A corner spot in a developing neighborhood with good foot traffic and reasonable rent. He was ecstatic, but there was a problem. He needed $80,000 for build-out, equipment, initial inventory, and operating capital for the first 6 months. He'd saved $30,000 from the food truck. He needed $50,000 more, and he needed it quickly or he'd lose the location. "Raven," he said one evening, his voice serious in a way I'd rarely heard. "I need to ask you something big, and I'll understand if you say no." I was sitting on our couch, tired from a long day at work. "What do you need?" "I need to borrow $50,000, he said. "I know that's your house down payment fund. I know that's money you've saved for years. But this restaurant is going to be huge. I'll pay you back within 2 years with interest. You'll be investing in us, in our future." My stomach clenched. $50,000 was everything I'd saved since college. It was 5 years of careful budgeting, side hustles, and saying no to vacations and luxuries. "That's a lot of money," I said carefully. "I know," Cade replied, moving closer. "And I wouldn't ask if I wasn't completely certain this would succeed. The location is perfect. The concept is proven. I just need capital to make it happen." He pulled out a business plan he'd been working on, pages of financial projections, market analysis, and operational details. He'd clearly put serious thought into this. As an accountant, I could see the projections were ambitious but not unreasonable if everything went according to plan. "What if it doesn't work?" I asked. "What if the restaurant fails?" "Then I'll get another job and pay you back anyway," he promised. "This is a loan, not a gift. We'll put it in writing." You'll have legal protection. I spent 3 days agonizing over the decision. My logical brain screamed warnings about mixing money and relationships, about betting everything on an unproven business, about the risk of losing both my savings and my boyfriend if things went wrong. But my heart, stupid and optimistic, believed in Cade and in us. I gave him $50,000. We signed a promissory note drafted by a lawyer friend, documenting the loan terms, repayment schedule, and 6% annual interest. Cade promised to make monthly payments starting 6 months after the restaurant opened. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You won't regret this," he whispered. "We're going to build something amazing together." The restaurant, named Melt Society, opened 4 months later. The launch was everything Cade had dreamed about. Lines out the door, rave reviews from food bloggers, social media buzz that brought customers from across the city. I worked the opening week alongside Cade, helping however I could while still maintaining my day job. I was so proud of him, of what we'd built together with my savings and his vision. For the first 6 months, Melt Society seemed wildly successful. Cade worked 18-hour days, rarely coming home before midnight. I'd see him briefly in the mornings before we both left for work. Our relationship took a backseat to the restaurant, but I understood. Building a business requires sacrifice. We'd have time for us later, once things stabilized. But things never stabilized. The restaurant was busy, but the margins were tighter than Cade's projections had anticipated. Food costs ran higher. Labor expenses exceeded budgets. Equipment broke and required expensive repairs. 6 months turned into 9 months with no loan repayment. When I asked about it gently, Cade would get defensive. "The restaurant is barely breaking even," he'd snap. "I'm reinvesting every dollar to keep it afloat. You'll get your money when we're more profitable." 9 months became a year. I depleted my emergency fund helping cover our apartment expenses since Cade was contributing nothing to household costs anymore. All his money, he said, was going back into the business. I started feeling like a bank rather than a girlfriend, but I swallowed my resentment and told myself this was temporary. Then one evening I came home early from work to find Cade packing boxes. My heart stopped. "What are you doing?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "I'm moving out," he said without looking at me. "This isn't working anymore, Raven." "What isn't working?" I demanded, my voice rising. "The restaurant is successful. You're living your dream. We built this together." "That's the problem," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "You think you built this? You gave me money. I built the restaurant. I work 18-hour days while you work your comfortable office job and come home expecting me to have energy for a relationship I don't have time for." The words hit like physical blows. "I gave you my life savings," I said, my voice shaking. "I supported you through everything. I believed in you when you had nothing but a food truck and a dream. And I appreciate that," Cade said, his tone cold. "But appreciation doesn't mean I owe you a relationship. We want different things, Raven. You want stability and normal couple stuff. I want to build an empire. Those things aren't compatible right now." "What about the loan?" I asked, desperation creeping in. "You owe me $50,000 plus a year of interest. I'll pay you back when the restaurant is more profitable," he said dismissively. "Right now I can't afford it. You'll have to wait." He left that night. I sat on the floor of our apartment, now just my apartment, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt my world collapse. The man I'd loved and supported had used me for capital, then discarded me the moment maintaining our relationship became inconvenient. I called him repeatedly over the next week. He ignored most calls, responded to a few with short texts saying he needed space. I went to the restaurant hoping to talk in person. The staff, people I'd helped hire and train during opening weeks, looked uncomfortable and told me Cade wasn't available. I felt humiliated, disposable, and financially destroyed. I contacted my lawyer friend who drafted the promissory note. She reviewed the document and gave me devastating news. "The note is legally binding," she said. "But enforcing it requires suing him. That means legal fees, court time, and years of fighting. Even if you win, collecting from someone who claims to have no money is nearly impossible. You could spend thousands trying to recover 50,000 and end up with nothing. I couldn't afford a lengthy legal battle. My savings were gone. My emergency fund was depleted. I was living paycheck to paycheck for the first time since college. I felt trapped, betrayed, and utterly powerless. The next 6 months were the darkest of my life. I fell into depression, barely managing to maintain my work performance. I'd lost my savings, my boyfriend, and my belief that hard work and good intentions mattered. Friends tried to help, but most of their advice involved moving on and accepting the loss as an expensive lesson. Easy for them to say when they hadn't lost $50,000 and the person they'd planned a future with. I started therapy to process the betrayal and financial trauma. My therapist, a compassionate woman named Fiona, helped me understand that Cade's actions weren't about my worthiness. They were about his character, his willingness to use people as stepping stones, his fundamental selfishness disguised as ambition. Slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding. I took on freelance accounting work to accelerate debt repayment and savings rebuilding. I moved to a cheaper apartment. I cut every unnecessary expense from my budget. And I made a promise to myself. I would never again let someone take advantage of my generosity. Never again would I confuse love with financial enablement. 2 years after Cade left, I'd rebuilt my emergency fund and had saved $15,000 toward a new house down payment. I'd been promoted at work, earning $20,000 more annually. I'd started dating again, carefully, with clear boundaries about money and expectations. I was healing, becoming stronger, learning that betrayal could be a teacher if you let it. Then one evening, my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. Cade. My hand hovered over the phone, heart racing. I hadn't spoken to him in over 18 months. Against my better judgment, I answered. Raven, Cade said, his voice strained. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. We have nothing to discuss, I replied coldly. Unless you're calling to repay the $50,000 you owe me plus 2 years of interest. That's actually why I'm calling, he said. Not to repay you yet, but to explain why I can't and to ask for your help. I almost hung up immediately. The audacity of asking for help after stealing my money and breaking my heart was breathtaking. But curiosity kept me on the line. I'm listening, I said. You have 2 minutes. The restaurant is failing, Cade said, words tumbling out quickly. I expanded too fast. Opened 2 more locations using investor money. The debt load is crushing me. I'm 3 months behind on rent across all locations. My main investor is threatening to force bankruptcy and liquidate everything unless I can show a clear path to profitability within 60 days. And this concerns me. How? I asked, my voice ice. Because I need someone who understands restaurant finances to help restructure my operations. He said desperately. You're an accountant. You know how to analyze costs and create realistic budgets. I'll pay you for consulting work, and I'll prioritize repaying your loan once we're stable. Let me understand this correctly, I said slowly. You stole my money, destroyed our relationship, ignored me for 2 years, and now you want me to save the business you built with my capital. Do I have that right? When you put it that way it sounds bad, Cade admitted. But Raven, if this business fails, you'll never get your money back. If I can save it, you'll be first in line for repayment. This is in your best interest too. He wasn't wrong about that, much as I hated to admit it. If Melt Society went bankrupt, I'd get nothing. If somehow it survived and became profitable again, I might eventually recover my loan. But the idea of helping the man who'd betrayed me made my stomach turn. I'll think about it, I said. Don't call me again. I'll contact you if I decide to help. I hung up before he could respond. For 3 days, I wrestled with the decision. Pride said let him fail, let karma complete its work, walk away with my dignity intact. But pragmatism said this might be my only chance to ever recover my money. And there was something else. A small, vindictive part of me that wanted to see Cade humbled, desperate, forced to acknowledge that he'd needed me more than he'd admitted. I called Fiona, my therapist, to discuss the situation. This is a business decision, not an emotional one, she said carefully. If you can detach emotionally and treat this as purely financial, it might be worth exploring. But if seeing him will reopen wounds you've worked hard to heal, no amount of money is worth that. Can you separate business from emotion? Think so, I said. Changed. I'm not the woman who gave him everything anymore. I'm someone who understands her value and won't be manipulated. Good, Fiona replied. Then approach this like you would any consulting client. Set clear boundaries, demand fair compensation, and protect yourself legally. Called Cade back on day 4. I'll review your financial situation, I said. But I have conditions. First, you'll pay me $200 per hour for consulting work, paid weekly regardless of business cash flow. Second, you'll sign a new agreement prioritizing my loan repayment. Third, we meet only in professional settings with clear agendas. No personal discussions about our past relationship. And fourth, I reserve the right to walk away at any time if you're dishonest or disrespectful. Cade agreed to everything immediately, which told me exactly how desperate he was. We met 2 days later at the flagship Melt Society location after closing. The restaurant looked tired, worn down by 2 years of heavy use and deferred maintenance. Cade looked worse. He'd lost weight. His eyes had dark circles. His confident swagger had been replaced by visible anxiety. He spread financial statements across a table. 3 locations, all bleeding money. Total monthly expenses of $90,000 against revenue of $85,000. Mounting debt to suppliers, landlords, and his main investor who'd loaned him $300,000 for expansion. It was a financial disaster, the kind of mess that happens when ambition outpaces competence. I spent 4 hours that first night analyzing numbers, asking questions and identifying problems. The issues were clear. Food costs were uncontrolled, running at 40% of revenue when they should be 30%. Labor was overstaffed, with too many managers and not enough efficiency. The menu was too large, creating waste and complexity. Rent at 2 locations was far too high for the revenue they generated. I can save this, I told Cade finally. But it requires brutal cuts. You'll need to close 1 location immediately, renegotiate rent at another, slash the menu by 40%, cut staff by 30%, and implement inventory controls you should have had from day 1. You'll also need to renegotiate terms with your main investor. Cade's face went pale. Closing a location means admitting failure. I don't have a choice, I said bluntly. You're hemorrhaging money. Close the weakest location now or watch all 3 fail within 6 months. Over the next 8 weeks, I worked 70-hour weeks between my day job and consulting for Melt Society. I was exhausted, stressed, and constantly fighting the emotional complexity of working closely with someone who destroyed me. But I was also good at this work. Really good. I implemented systems, trained staff, negotiated with suppliers for better pricing, and helped Cade understand how to actually run a profitable restaurant rather than just a busy one. The changes were painful. We closed the location with the worst lease terms, letting go 15 employees. We cut the menu from 35 items to 20, focusing on the highest margin bestsellers. We reduced labor by restructuring roles and improving efficiency. Most importantly, I sat with Cade and his investor, a real estate developer named Quinn Blackwell, and presented a restructured debt plan. Quinn was skeptical until I walked him through my projections showing how the business could be profitable within 4 months and fully solvent within 3 years. These projections are solid, Quinn said, reviewing my spreadsheets. Much more realistic than anything Cade's provided before. Who are you again? I'm the person he borrowed $50,000 from 2 years ago who never got repaid, I said coolly. Now I'm the person saving his business, so I have a chance of eventually recovering my money. Quinn laughed, a sharp sound without humor. You're cleaning up his mess so you can get back money he stole from you. That's either brilliant or masochistic. Maybe both, I agreed. But my projections are sound. If Cade follows this plan exactly, the business survives and everyone gets paid eventually. Can you live with the terms I've outlined? Quinn agreed to restructure his loan with lower monthly payments for 18 months in exchange for a higher interest rate. It wasn't ideal, but it kept Melt Society alive. 3 months into the restructuring, the flagship location showed its first profitable month. Cade was ecstatic, crediting the turnaround to implementing my systems. "We did it," he said after reviewing the monthly financials. "We actually pulled this off." "You did it," I corrected. "I just showed you how. There's a difference." Over the next 3 months, both remaining locations became consistently profitable. Not wildly successful but stable, generating enough revenue to cover expenses, service debt, and slowly rebuild capital reserves. My consulting work had saved Melt Society from bankruptcy. I'd proven I was more than just the girlfriend who'd funded his dream. I was the professional who'd saved it when his ambition nearly destroyed it. During one of our weekly financial review meetings, Cade looked at me with something like wonder. "I was an idiot to let you go," he said quietly. "You're brilliant, Raven. I didn't see it before, but I see it now." "What we had, what we could still have," I interrupted before he could finish. "We have a professional relationship. That's all. I'm here to protect my financial interests, not rekindle a romance with someone who proves he sees people as resources to exploit." His face fell. "Changed. I've learned from my mistakes." "People don't change that fundamentally," I said. "They just get better at hiding their nature until they need something again. You needed my money when we met. You needed my expertise when your business nearly failed. Both times you were charming and grateful. But what happens when you don't need me anymore?" He didn't have an answer for that. 6 months after I'd started consulting, Melt Society was stable enough that my intensive involvement was no longer necessary. I'd implemented systems, trained managers, and created processes that could run without my constant oversight. I reduced my hours to just monthly financial reviews. It was time to address the elephant in every room: my loan repayment. I called a meeting with Cade and Quinn to discuss it formally. "The business is stable," I began. "It's time we discuss repaying the original $50,000 loan plus accumulated interest. By my calculations, with interest compounded annually at 6% over 3 years, the total owed is approximately $59,600. Cade shifted uncomfortably. "That's a lot of money." "That's what you owe," I said flatly. "I propose monthly payments of $2,000 over 30 months. That's manageable with current cash flow and doesn't jeopardize business operations." Cade looked at Quinn, clearly hoping for support. "The business can afford $2,000 monthly," Quinn confirmed. "Miss Raven's projections show adequate cash flow even with debt repayment. You don't have a legitimate reason to refuse." "Fine," Cade said, though he didn't sound happy about it. $2,000 monthly starting next month. We formalized the arrangement in writing with my lawyer, reviewing every word. This time I wasn't signing anything without ironclad protections and witnesses. The first payment arrived on time. Then the second. Then the third. I was actually getting my money back. Slowly, painfully slowly, but reliably. Each payment felt like vindication, proof that patience and strategy were better than anger and immediate revenge. Then, 9 months into the repayment plan, everything changed again. Cade called requesting an urgent meeting. His tone had that familiar desperation I'd learned to recognize. When I arrived at the restaurant, Quinn was already there looking grim. "What's happening?" I asked, taking a seat. "I have an opportunity," Cade said, excitement breaking through his anxiety. "A restaurant group wants to buy Melt Society. All locations, the brand, everything. They're offering $1.2 million. My heart rate accelerated. "That's a substantial offer." "It is," Quinn agreed. "And it's a good deal for everyone. Cade pays off his debts, I recover my investment, and the brand continues under new ownership." "What's the problem?" I asked. "There isn't one," Cade said. "I wanted to tell you before I accept. You've earned that courtesy." I should have felt relieved. This meant full repayment of my loan immediately, closure on a chapter that had haunted me for years. But something felt wrong. "Walk me through the breakdown," I said. "How much goes where?" Cade pulled out a document. After paying off Quinn's loan and settling other business debts, he'd clear about $400,000. My $59,600 would be paid in full from the sale proceeds. Everyone gets made whole. "Except," I said slowly, You're walking away with $400,000 from a business you built with my money after betraying my trust. You're profiting enormously while I just get back what you stole. That's not fair, Cade protested. I built this business. I worked 18-hour days for years. You made a loan that you're being repaid for with interest. Fair, I repeated, my voice hardening. Let's talk about fair, Cade. Fair would have been you repaying me on schedule like you promised. Fair would have been you not abandoning me the moment maintaining our relationship became inconvenient. Fair would have been you acknowledging that without my $50,000, Melt Society never would have existed. You don't get to lecture me about fairness. The room went silent. Quinn looked between us, clearly understanding there was history he hadn't known about. What do you want? Cade finally asked. I want what I'm actually owed, I said. Not just the loan repayment, but compensation for the 3 years of stress, the savings I lost, the opportunities one missed while waiting for you to honor your commitments. The consulting work I did to save this business when you'd run it into the ground. I want a percentage of the sale. Quinn raised his eyebrows. That's not how loans work, Cade said. You're getting repaid. That's what you're legally entitled to. Legally, yes, I agreed. But morally, I'm entitled to more. And here's what you're forgetting. I reviewed the sale agreement before this meeting. The buyers are requiring that all major creditors sign releases confirming they've been paid in full and have no future claims against the business. Without those releases, the sale doesn't close. Cade's face went white. You wouldn't. I would, I said calmly. Unless we renegotiate terms that actually reflect the value I provided to this business, I won't sign the release. The sale dies, you lose the $400,000 payout, and we're back to you making $2,000 monthly payments for the next 24 months. Choice. Quinn actually smiled. She has you, he said to Cade. You should have treated her better when you had the chance. Cade looked furious but trapped. What do you want? 15% of your net proceeds from the sale, I said. That's $60,000 on top of the loan repayment. Total compensation of approximately $120,000 for my 3 years of financial and professional investment in your success. That's outrageous, Cade sputtered. That's negotiable, Quinn interrupted, looking at me with something like respect. I take 10% and call it generous given what she's describing. 10%, I said after a moment's consideration. $40,000 plus the loan repayment. $100,000 total. Final offer. Take it or watch your sale collapse and spend 2 more years paying me back slowly while working in a business you clearly want to exit. Cade sat in angry silence for a full minute. Then, through clenched teeth, he said, fine. 10%. We formalized the new agreement within 3 days. The sale closed 2 weeks later. $100,000 was deposited into my account, $59,600 for loan repayment and $40,000 for my percentage of Cade's proceeds. I stared at that number for a long time. It wasn't the $50,000 I'd originally lost. After accounting for 3 years of interest I should have earned on that money invested elsewhere, I was probably still slightly behind. But it was close enough. Close enough to justice. I took Fiona, my therapist, to dinner to celebrate. You did it, she said, raising her glass. You got your money back and your dignity. How does it feel? Like closure, I said honestly. Not perfect closure, but real closure. Cade learned that using people has consequences. I learned that protecting yourself legally and standing firm on your worth can eventually lead to justice. Neither of us is who we were 3 years ago. A week after the sale closed, Cade called one last time. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity won. What do you want? I asked. To apologize, he said quietly. Really apologize, not just say words because I need something from you. What I did was wrong. I used you, betrayed you, and convinced myself it was justified because I was building something important. But watching you save my business, seeing how competent and strong you are, realizing that you never needed me but I desperately needed you, that changed my perspective. I'm sorry, Raven. You deserved better than how I treated you. Thank you for saying that, I replied. But here's what I've learned. Apologies are only meaningful if they come before you need something, not after. You're apologizing now because the transaction is complete and you feel guilty. Not because you actually understand the harm you caused. Maybe you're right, he admitted. But I am sorry regardless of the timing. I hope someday you'll believe that. Maybe someday I will, I said. But that day isn't today. Goodbye, Cade. I hung up and blocked his number permanently. 3 years after giving him $50,000 I couldn't afford to lose, I'd recovered $100,000 and learned lessons worth far more than money. I learned that love without boundaries is just exploitation with better marketing. I learned that protecting yourself legally isn't cynical, it's essential. I learned that patience and strategy beat anger and immediate revenge every single time. And I learned that the person who takes your love and money thinking you're disposable will eventually discover you were the most valuable thing they ever had, usually right after they've lost you forever. Today, I have $60,000 saved toward my house down payment, a promotion at work, and a new relationship with someone who treats my resources, emotional and financial, with respect. Cade sold his percentage of Melt Society and moved to another city to start over. I hear through mutual acquaintances that he's struggling to recreate the success he had here, probably because he doesn't have anyone like me supporting him anymore. And that knowledge, that understanding that he peaked when he had me and declined when he lost me, that's the real justice in this story. Not the money I recovered, though that helped. But the certainty that he knows, will always know, that discarding me was the worst business decision he ever made. If this story reminded you that the person who uses you as a stepping stone might someday need you to pull them back up, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about dignity, boundaries, and making people face consequences for taking advantage of love. Drop a comment about a time someone underestimated your value and lived to regret it. Because sometimes the best revenge is becoming so valuable that the person who discarded you spends years wishing they'd treated you better. When someone shows you they'll use you and throw you away, believe them, protect yourself, and build a life so successful they spend forever wondering what they lost. That's how you win. See you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching Karma, Payback, come full circle every week, we dive into tales of betrayal and poetic justice. Don't miss the next one. Tap the subscribe button and join the Revenge Squad.